get into taking a look at, thanks, I'm introduced. We want to get into taking a look at what the leadership track is about. I wanted to share with you the winner's circle. This is on the C website, but it shows for the last 3 years some of the winners, and you see the winners of the Stephen E. Barton Leadership and Culture Award. We've got a esteemed history of companies in this room winning that award, which focuses on the leadership practices within each company. And it's not an award for, the great leader who rides in on the white horse and saves everybody, but it's an award for leaders who practice consistent leadership practices. And what are those leadership practices? Of course, you might notice down at the bottom the Richard Hall Award for Leadership Excellence. That is an individual award for leaders. And Doug Green, 2010, you just heard from one of those. The award system, by the way, is judged by a group of independent retired business executives, some of which are from the aerospace industry. They work for the SCORE organization, part of the Small Business Administration, and they help us out every year by judging the award process. They look at and grade awards independently and then come out with the winners. So in the category of leadership and culture, we have a consistent history of companies who follow the best practices that we're going to be taking a look at today. The C roadmap, in its simplified form, of course, today there are 15 processes in the C roadmap. Down through the years, it was refined from 32 processes in 2003 to today's roadmap, which only has 15, and 7 of those reside in the leadership and culture area that you see highlighted. They have to do with establishing a high-performance leadership system and focusing on supply chain integration and new product startup. Yes, they are more specific to aerospace than, say, the Baldrige Award. There's probably about a 30% or a 80% overlap between the Baldrige Award criteria and the C criteria, but there are some things that are very specific to aerospace and very specific to small and mid-sized companies who are suppliers in aerospace. And so these 7 practices that you see are the ones that form the basis for what we're going to be looking at today. The suppliers that developed these 7, practices that defined what they were part of a pilot in 2003 and 2004. And down through the years, the Supplier Advisory Council and others have spent a lot of time looking at what are the practices that should be in the leadership track and how do we describe what needs to go on in there to be successful. So it's a result of a lot of industry time and development to say what are the leadership practices that always are present within very successful companies. Now, of course, you can have a successful company that has nothing to do with leadership, right? If you hit the right product at the right time, then you're going to be successful for some period. But we've also seen a lot of companies go out of business because leadership couldn't keep up with and change and reinvent the company as those products and services kind of went out of date and somebody else, competitors came in. So it's really the leadership system that gives us the long-term sustainability for any organization's real success. And so that's why we wanted to focus on that today. And these are the 7 practices, as you see, 111 through 115, all the way through 131, that have become, kind of the backbone of that leadership system. Now, the C website has a lot of resources for these 7 practices. And we also have process owner forums that run on a regular quarterly basis where C members share with each other the process owners for each specific process are the same in each company, and so we get on the phone and on a conference with a webcast, and we share best practices in each one of these areas at least quarterly. And Jeff Hawley is the one that leads that process owner forum. We also have copies of all of the presentations on the C website for each one of those process owner forums going back for a number of years in a library. And we, so we promote the sharing of best practices around these 7 areas so that everybody can learn from that experience. On the C website also is a starter set of flowcharts. Now I know this is an eye test and you can't see most of what's on the slide, but really I just want to illustrate. I don't want to challenge you to try to read all of it. The criteria for each process, and then a best practices flowchart of what some of the best practices are reside on the C website, for download. So any process owner that's just starting out can access this sample flowchart and get an idea of some of the best practices in each one of the typical steps. Now, as you probably know, C members can design their leadership process however they'd like. This isn't, like a required process. And so different members will have different processes that they follow. But you'll always see, a great deal of the best practices that you see here in most of those processes. For instance, you'll usually see strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats as a part of strategic planning. That's generally maybe 80% of the time you'll see it. And then 20% of the time you'll see something else. So we focus on making sure that we have plenty of resource material on all of the leadership practices available on the C website. And as you can see when I'm just going through quickly here, each one of these has the result of lots and lots of feedback and input from all the different C members who have been through and implemented those practices. And we know that if the management team consistently follows these best practices, well, we're doing what the Aristotle quote said. We're taking best practices and we're making them a habit. And so that's what we learned in the Baldrige Award by examining thousands of companies, and that's what we've learned by doing audits and examining hundreds of companies in C, is that those companies that have consistent practices like these leadership practices consistently outperform. We did our recent survey on C membership and how we're doing, and we discovered that, not yet, we discovered that C members are up, 80% of C members are up over 2011, and in the general population of the supply chain, only 20% of the population are up over 2011. So we know that C members, by consistently practicing best practices, and leadership is included, consistently outperform other suppliers in the supply chain. We're just more attractive to our customers. Customers want to see companies that are improving. They may not be able to quantify exactly what they want to see, but they know it when they see it. And when you do a site visit, and when you talk about improvements that you're making, and you talk in the language of process, you demonstrate you have process owners that are responsible and accountable for their processes, then customers naturally gravitate to that kind of language, that kind of operation that you demonstrate shows them what they want to see, that you're following a pathway, and it's actually a very strong and well-founded pathway, just like the Baldrige is, for determining whether or not a company is pursuing best practices and continually trying to improve. So we know that we're more attractive to our customers, and we know why that is. And so these are the 7 practices then that we're going to focus on. And